this computer. Okay. Now then, I'm going to go back to my screen share. So Dixie wants to put a new listing in before it's in the MLS. And the problem you guys have had is then once we go to launch this listing, all kinds of weird things happen, and you start saying, oh, I can't do this, I lost my documents, I did that, and those kind of things. So we've kind of made this process a lot simpler and streamlined it. You get to push a couple of more buttons, but instead of pushing the buttons and then waiting for a lot of stuff, you can do this. So Ms. Dixie wants to put in a brand new listing, and she would go over here to Quick Launch. Hi, Sharon.
Oh, good morning.
And in Quick Launch, you're going to see two areas, one for you to put the listing address and one for you to put an address if there's not one in the system. So particularly on new builds, when you're doing addresses, you don't have anything in the system yet. What I'm going to do is act like this is in here. So where have I, okay, I know where I'll put 642 North Court, and that's West North Court, Wichita, Kansas. And the reason I'm putting one in that's been in there before is this was my grandmother's house way back in the day. So don't expect a lot, guys. This house was built in 1932, and it was in a floodplain and all kinds of stuff, you know, when this was country. And when I click on it, it's going to tell me it found the address. It did. And it's going to put in red all the stuff I got to put in. So it's single family detached. It knows either from tax records or from the MLS previously, it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, which it is. Got to put a property style in and a list price. Well, I promise you grandma's house ain't going to sell for that anymore. I might get 80 out of it on a good day. The list date, I'm going to put in, you cannot put in a list 5 months from now. And the reason you can't is what we're putting in here now is going to transmit up to New Jersey and to Better Homes and Gardens database. And even though you won't put it in the MLS for 2 months, as far as they're concerned, you sort of have this listing coming down the pike shortly. Now, this is not really problematic for most of you, but it can be problematic for new home construction people. I've sold a custom new home house, and I've got the listing, and I'm going to put it in now, but the MLS won't allow it to be put in for 3 months because it takes 3 months before the house is framed enough that you can put it in the MLS. So that's why I say you've got to use today's date or something like that. You can't put it 3 months out.
Greg,
Yes.
so this is where I get mixed up
Uh-huh.
because before today,
Mm-hmm.
it would never let me put it in any later than today. So I'm putting it in because typically I like to put my stuff in today because I'm listing it
Right.
tomorrow and it wouldn't let me. Are you saying that now it will let me do it tomorrow?
No, it won't. It will still be today. But it doesn't matter because this data is not going to be pushed to the MLS. This data is going to be pushed to Realogy.
Okay.
Okay? So it's okay. And in fact, it won't be pushed to Realogy till you launch it. So then you come over here to the expiration date and put in the real expiration date, when it's going to expire. And I'm going to delete this later, so don't worry about it, Dixie. Anticipated launch date. Now there, Dixie, is where we're starting to talk about when it will go live. So you can't legally advertise a listing until you have a signed listing agreement. That's why you have to put in today's date. You can't put in tomorrow's date because you can't tell everybody about it until you have a signed listing agreement. But if you anticipate it's going to launch tomorrow, you can put that there. Does that make more sense now?
Perfect.
Okay. But I'm going to go ahead and launch it today because actually what I want to do is make this into a transaction immediately. So once I have the required information in, I can save it. And this is going to come up. Well, I don't have a listing photo because I haven't taken pictures yet. So I'm going to cancel that task. Now, what happens if I cancel it? Well, this would be the images that would go out pre-listing so that the other agent that we would be sending it out in-house would know what it would look like. It will still pull in all of the images from the MLS once you put it in the MLS, okay? So if you want to put the pictures in, go for it, but I don't want to do it right now. I just want to get my paperwork ready. So why am I doing this? Others, now you saw that I could have property so quickly, and I'm going to put pics from MLS. Doesn't really matter. You're just putting a note in so you'll know why you did it. Okay, that's canceled, and I push OK. And now it comes to this page. I can put in all the paperwork that I normally would now. You guys know how to do the paperwork. And I'm going to say I got a listing agreement. I'm going to click.
I'm going to stop you again.
Okay.
So this is going to alleviate me having 2 of every file.
Correct.
I like it.
Okay. Well, let me put it this way. Yes, there will still be a listing side and there will still be a transaction side, but instead of having 2 listing sides or you having to upload everything twice, we can work it together. Okay.
Okay, good deal.
Give me one step at a time. So I'm putting in my listing documents now. Well, I've got a referral fee that I'm going to put in here, and I'm going to open that. And I'm going to put in lead-based paint. And that's that invoice from Firetronics. And so you can see that some of this stuff that was in progress is going away, and now Dee Dee's being told she's got 2 documents to review. And I'm going to put the PCR in. And we'll call that. And then I'm going to put in the seller's net and the CMA. And then I'm going to show you a secret that you can ignore, but just understand why it's there. And the CMA. So while we're doing this up front, in the background, what's happening is Brokerage Engine, this program, is sending this file up to New Jersey, saying, hey, this agent has a new listing. And until Brokerage Engine hears back from New Jersey, you're not allowed to turn this to a transaction. So how long does it take them to hear back? About 15 to 20 minutes. So see here where it says miscellaneous? And there's this listing GUID number. When that populates, then you'll have, well, I'm sorry, I haven't launched this yet. So I'm going to launch this. Good to launch. I'm going to launch it a second time. So now this is being sent up to Realogy to get that GUID number. So if it were me and I were you guys, I would go ahead and launch it before I put paperwork in, just so you'll have something to do while it's being sent up. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. And so I can still add paperwork. Just do the launch now. And I've launched it. I'm going to see if I got a GUID number. Probably not. But once you have that number, in about 10 or 15 minutes, you'll be able to go to this little arrow here, and you'll have a button that says Add Transaction. And what that means is it's going to take this file and the other file and create a transaction from it, and then you can start putting in your contract and whatnot. And I'll bet you haven't been doing that, have you, Dixie? Hello, Dixie. Is Dixie out there? You're muted, Dixie. Okay. So while this is out thinking, I'm going to go into Dixie's listing file.
I just let you know I'm here.
Okay. So once I'm in listing, Dixie's listing files, you'll see that 642 North Court is here, but you'll also notice it has no MLS or web ID number. It's that web ID number that we magically need. If I were to come into one of Dixie's other listings and click on it, I can come up here and go into edit details and add a transaction. And that's how we marry the paperwork up. Now, I don't know why this doesn't have stuff from the MLS yet. Because, oh, well, it has no MLS ID.
It's because there's two of them, like most all of my listings, because I put them in too early.
No,
and then the next day, when I actually do put it in, I get another one.
yep,
And I don't know which one has docs and which one doesn't.
And that's why we're trying to set this up to alleviate some of that. If I look at Forest View, I see it has an MLS ID number. And I can come in here and I can see it's got 21 pictures. So the two things you can do to alleviate those is to go back into these without an MLS number and put it in, or you can make sure that the address that you put in here is exactly the same as it shows up in the MLS. Because then what happens when Brokerage Engine sees it in the MLS, it will try to, it'll say, oh, those addresses are the same. Let's put them together.
Yeah, see the Country Acres one?
Or there's a third way. This one, yeah.
And the other one is just AVE instead of Full Avenue.
So, right. And so it didn't recognize those. And it also says North Country Acres Avenue and Country Acres Avenue.
And so, but
or,
MLS
or you can let Dee Dee, Kim, or I know, and we can merge these files.
Okay.
And so if we merge them, then they go down to one and it merges it all the way through all the systems. So you just have to say, I've got the file in there twice, I don't want it twice. But if you followed the order I just sort of told you, you should be able to then have a matchup line up and not be in there twice anymore.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes,
on the Country Acres, I had it under contract once, it fell apart, and now it's under contract again. Is that why there's two?
Is that should be two, because we have to keep track of all fall apart contracts as well as the active contracts.
So that's probably why that one still has two, because you had
Could be.
Combined all of my doubles, I thought, a couple weeks ago.
No.
Okay, so my point is, and I want to go back in here. I want to see how long it takes it to get the web ID up, and this little miscellaneous will tell you, yeah, it's still not there. But I experimented with this with Mary a while ago, and so it will sometimes take up to 15. I don't think it's 20 minutes. I think it's 4 times an hour that they send stuff to Realogy and get it back. But you'll have all your documents here, and then you'll have a tab that says add transaction. So if we were going to add a transaction for Forest View, her documents are here. We could add a transaction right here, whether it's pulled in from the MLS or put in early, and that transaction then creates it from all this and starts the file and connects the files. And that's the best part.
Where was the add transaction? I didn't see your pointer anywhere.
If you are in a listing, let's go back to your listings are in here, and you click on Forest View. Up here next to Edit Details is a little drop-down arrow.
Oh, I think our screen's in the way.
Yeah, the little picture.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And you click on that drop-down arrow, and it says Add Transaction underneath Edit Details.
And that's once you get a contract.
That's once you get a contract and you want to attach it to the listing. Here, let me move that over. Does that help you? The little arrow and the add transaction and stuff?
So it's only a transaction when you're under contract on something.
Correct. The rest of the time it's a listing. And so you wouldn't go in here to add a transaction when you have the listing. You want to add your transaction to your listing. If you are on the buyer side, that's when you want to add a transaction. And I know that's easy to confuse people. And this program was designed by somebody who does a whole lot of listing and fewer transactions. So that made a lot of sense to them. And I sort of get it. When you're trying to add a transaction to something, you want to make sure you're adding it. You want to put a contract to your listing so the file's all into one. So in the future, that must be Sherry. There we go. So in the future, click on your transaction. Come up here where it says edit details. I said click on your listing, drop down to add transaction, and then it will start taking you through the fields that you normally see. It's already got the address in there. It's got the price you listed it at, and then you can start adding stuff instead of starting from scratch. Okay?
Mhm.
Okay then. Any other questions on that right there?
So is that how the texts go out? Because Dixie, it seems like she's the only one that does it.
Yep.
When you have a listing that's coming up, and so we get it kind of the day before, that's how that works then?
He does a quick launch. Yep.
Okay. I was wondering how that, well, she told me, but I didn't understand how it works, so.
I don't know that I'm a real fan of it. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Some people say never send me that message again because it's overwhelming. And in fact, you can control that in your profile. If you click on your picture up there and say edit profile, you can say, do I want to get coming soon listings or not? Do I want to get buyer market needs soon or not? You know, and if I turn that off, then I no longer get those. Like I know a couple of agents that just said, boy, I get them so fast, I don't need anything else telling me. Other people say, no, I want to know as soon as something's hitting the company because I want to race over there before anybody else does. So that's a personal choice that you make. And you can decide if you want to get it an email only or text message. The only other thing you might want to see from time to time is there are some tutorials up there that'll walk you through things that are fairly decent and short. But I was really wanting, because I changed this whole quick launch to where you can launch them yourselves now. You weren't able to do that in the past. That changed last night. And so you can change it into a real live listing now. And we still have no web ID. It may be the top of the hour before we get one to be able to make that a transaction. Yep. And yes, Dixie, I'll get rid of that for you. Okay, other questions?
This is Erica. I have a question, or actually two questions.
Sure.
Okay, so when we go to put in a transaction, when we are representing the buyer, you know, that page tells us that if it's a Better Homes and Gardens listing, we need to add it from the listings page. But I'm the buyer's agent, and I just happen to be getting the sale. The other agent is also with our company. So do I need to wait until the listing agent puts it in on their side? Then will it pop up for me when she lists that I'm the
That's a
seller?
question that I do not have an answer to because I've never done that. I understand the point of your question, and I think you're right. They are asking you right here to ask the listing agent to put it in first.
Okay.
That would be a Dee Dee or Kim question to make sure that you have access after, and the answer I think is yes. But I've not experimented with it.
You can do it
so
yourself first if you're like myself. I do it immediately, and some people aren't near as quick. And
Yeah.
so I have done it where I've had the other side, and it still, the minute you put it in, then I put a note in there to Dee Dee and will say, because it asks you already, if the agent's from Better Homes Gardens, it'll say what the company, then it'll say ask for the agent in that company. And when you put that information in there, it'll automatically pull it to their listing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. I just haven't been in mine this morning, so I'm under contract with Marie Segura on the listing side, and so I didn't know if I needed to wait for her to put hers in or if it would automatically show up on mine. I didn't want to screw something up.
Well, I think like Dixie said, she just goes ahead and does it, and I get that. I haven't experimented with it, so I can't tell you a best practices. Uh,
Okay.
I will say this: there's very little that this thing's going to screw up so badly we can't fix on the back end if we have to. So go ahead and for now, do it whichever way you're comfortable with, and I'll try to find out best practices by Thursday. How's that?
Okay. My other question is on the main page where we can type in, that we have what we're looking for clients and things.
On the
When I
dashboard?
type, yeah, on the buyer needs there.
Okay.
So I've put some in there, and then once that need has been fulfilled, I go back in and delete mine. I reached out to one of the agents that had one listed on here that basically said, oh, that need is no longer there.
Okay.
But I still see that it is on the list. So I don't know if we need to either remind people that they need to go and delete them or what, but it's kind of like, I'm like, well, if nobody is deleting them except me, then I feel kind of silly reaching out and they're like, oh, that was 4 months ago. Well, still on the list.
Well, I will ask if I can have a setting that allows me to time out buyer needs. That basically.
Yeah,
Maybe we're gonna delete those ourselves.
Well,
that's what I've been doing.
my point would be I'm not going to count on everyone else to come back in here and delete them themselves because they're going to forget they put them in here.
Yeah.
I would rather have it to a point where they auto delete after X number of days, and if your buyer still has that need, go back and put it in again.
Put it in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or something that sends the agent an email that says, "Is this still valid? Yes," or no, it's no longer a need. Delete it.
Well,
Yeah.
none of mine are, so you can delete them or try or practice if you want.
Well, I wasn't trying to call out anybody in particular, but some agents like yourself, Dixie, you put a lot of stuff in there, which is fantastic. But I also know you have a lot of clients, so it's hard to know. If you're still looking for something, I try and reach out when I know I'm going to have a listing that matches something in there.
I'm going to say this.
Yeah, save that one. I do still have that one, Greg. That one.
Well, I didn't delete it, but I'm going to say this, Erica, and this is an issue not only with this, but it's also an issue with the MLS. There are prospects that you'll put in there that you'll put a search in, and I've had, as a MLS board of directors, we have this argument every time we switch over. There are some prospects in there that are 10 years old that those, you call the agent and say, they still looking for the property? I said, no, they died. And there's still agents leave them in there because people don't go back and fix them up. So the best practice I think would be that they delete that you delete them as you fill your client's needs. But the reality is people don't remember where they put stuff like this.
Yeah,
so
no, that makes sense.
My best practice is going to be to have them auto delete after a certain number of time. And if you want to re-put them back in there, it might be a good way to remind you that you have a client that you need to reach out to and make sure they're still looking too. So I'll ponder that and discuss that with the powers that be at Brokerage Engine. Okay, we are right at the top of the hour.
Greg?
Yes?
So on this auto delete thing, so my real big closing last year, those clients I worked with for 12 years.
I know.
So how are we going to be notified so we can say, no, don't do that? Or we have to go in and reset it every time?
Again, I have no idea yet. It has just been brought to my attention. And just this brief discussion, you've already seen what a difference it can make between two people. So trying to find a happy medium ain't going to be easy, but let me keep pondering and see what we come up with. Okay? All right. Anything else? I'm going to quit impersonating Dixie. And I'm going to go back into listings. I see a different view than you guys because I get to see stuff differently. And look, now North Court has a web ID. So in the time we've been on this call, you can go in and I could add a transaction. I'm going to delete it, but because I get to delete it. You guys don't. All right, guys. I thank you very, very much. I hope that helped clarify some. I'm going to stop the recording and stop the share.